Welcome everyone to episode 7 of Talking Talent. This is actually not a podcast in the typical form that you're used to, but a webinar from Cordia's HR Leadership Series. And it features my friend Julia Medvin from Venture Global and Katie Phillips from GCS Siegel. We discuss employee engagement and retention in an ever-changing landscape. Really fun and engaging conversation with those two. Hope you enjoy the episode and don't forget to subscribe. All right, 9:01. We're gonna get started as people roll in here and get their coffee and get settled. Thank you again for joining us. This is the 9th installment of our Human Resources Leadership Series presented by Cordia Resources and Human Capital Strategic Consulting. My name is Sam McCarthy, and I know a lot of you who are attending today really appreciate that. I lead the human resources practice here at Cordia. We are a leader in executive search and staffing in human resources, accounting, finance, and IT. It's not often that I get to use human resources first because most people know Cordia for accounting and finance. So I like leading with human resources, which is the most important part. I also host a podcast called Talking Talent, which focuses on all different topics in the HR world. And we're going to have our 6th episode out soon. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon, and also online through our webpage. Co-hosting this webinar as always with Julie Simmons, who's the Managing Director of Human Capital Strategic Consulting. Julie is a friend of Cordia and of myself, and we're thrilled to be continuing to bring you the best and most thoughtful HR and talent acquisition leaders to share their insights on these topics. We started this series prior to March 2020, right when the world changed. We did 8 episodes through the end of 2021, and we've had about a year hiatus. The goal going forward is really to do 2 of these a year, probably 1 in the spring and 1 in the fall. So be looking forward for topics for 2023. If you have some ideas, shoot them my way. As you can see, our panelists are live on video coming to you from their undisclosed locations in the DC metro area. We appreciate you tuning in from wherever you are. There are likely many more people watching this from their office than they were last year at this time, which is great. And I'm sure that aspect of working remotely will come up in our discussion during this webinar, which is titled Employee Engagement and Retention, What's the New Normal? Just a few things I wanted to make you aware of. All attendees are on mute, so you may access the chat box on your Zoom screen. We really would like you to ask questions. That is going to be part of this discussion at the end. Please use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to post questions throughout the webinar. And then you'll receive an email with the recording of these slides 24 to 48 hours after the event. Now I'd like to turn over to Julie to further introduce our panelists.
Thanks so much, Sam. Thrilled to be here with an elite crew of HR leaders. We have Katie Phillips with us, who's the Director of Human Resources at GCS Siegel, and Julia Medvin, the Senior Director of HR Operations at Venture Global LNG. We're thrilled to hear from them. They have terrific knowledge and experience about HR, and I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. So Katie, if you'd like to go first, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Thanks, Julie. So I am the Director of HR for GCS Siegel. We're a general contractor, commercial construction company based in DC. We're a smaller firm at 50 people, but growing. And I've been in HR for a number of years, started out in the tech industry, and then moved into consulting with Julie, and then into this role at GCS Siegel.
Thanks so much. Julia, I'd love to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. Julia Medvin. In my current role, I lead the Total Rewards HRIS and HR operations function for a fairly young organization. We're in the energy space. We basically take natural gas, convert it to liquid nitrogen gas. We are a global organization. We are a very fast growing organization. So there's a lot of exciting opportunities. I've spent a lot of years in HR. I have actually quite an untraditional HR career path, but I fully am a big HR supporter. I think HR is the backbone of most organizations and organization success. And I kind of fell into HR. I thought I was going to be an actuary at first, and did actuarial consulting for a while. Decided I didn't quite like it. I like the numbers. I just don't want to be married to the numbers, if you know what I mean. And so I did a couple of transitions, consulting, corporate. I landed at Accenture corporate office in HR team, and that was my first step into corporate HR, and I loved it. And so ever since, I did a couple of transitions. I did a startup in HR, which was quite a humbling experience, which made me believe what HR can truly do for an organization. And happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. I am looking forward to this discussion today.
All right, thank you both for that. We're really, really lucky to have you. Really appreciate your time being here. So the topics of employee engagement and retention are broad topics, but there are a lot of different things in the HR space that have kind of come to the forefront over the past couple of years that I think COVID-19 has either exposed in organizations or has really strengthened organizations. You've kind of seen the value of, and I think one of those things is employee engagement and what that means. Katie, I'm going to start with you. Just very broadly, what does employee engagement mean to you or mean within your organization, and how do you measure that?
Yeah, so in our organization, I think what's so important is that everybody understands the mission and is, there to further the mission of the organization, and appreciates the culture and the values. And, you don't have to have you don't need to have your values written everywhere for your employees to understand what they are. I think it's reflective on the leadership, and that they are living out what their values are and what the culture is, and that what we say in our interview process is consistent with what is actually true once they join the organization. Employees are savvy, and they can see right through when companies are just, painting a picture that may not be accurate. So, to me, in our company, our employees, we talk to them, we meet with them on a regular basis. We're approachable. Our leadership team knows everybody's name. We're fortunate enough that we're small enough to have that be the case. But we have our pulse on what's going on. If we hear there's a challenge or somebody's struggling, we bring them in the office. A lot of our folks are on construction sites, so we're not all together every day. We'll make sure to bring somebody in, sit them down. Hey, what's going on? That's how we find out if somebody's overwhelmed, or maybe they have a challenging client and, they need some help working through that. So, just having that pulse and that open communication, I think, is so important with engagement.
Thank you. And is there one of the things that we talked about prior, and that is that I've discussed a lot with clients, is the idea of doing an exit interview with somebody who might leave a role. Julie, I want to get your thoughts in 1 second, but Katie, is that something that your organization does? And would love to hear if so.
Yeah, we definitely do. Hopefully we're having those conversations prior to an exit interview. So we certainly do an exit interview and learn from those experiences. But like I said, we sit down with folks, we try to, on a formal basis, twice a year, but then on an informal basis, we're talking with folks. So we're asking the questions you would ask during an exit interview. How are things going with your manager? How are things going with your team? Do you feel supported? Do you need more training? Making sure that they're equipped with the tools that they need. So we also do that formally at the 90-day point. So when somebody starts, we meet with them again at 90 days. Again, is what we told you during the interview process true? Are you, how are you doing? Because those first 90 days, those first 6 months are critical. Employees are continuing to get phone calls from recruiters, and, they'll jump ship after 3 months if it's not working. So we try to start that engagement as early as possible.
Thank you. Julia, how about you? What does employee engagement mean to you and within your organization?
Yeah, I totally agree with Katie, and she brought up really good points. I love topic of engagement. It is a ever-changing, ever-evolving, and we as an HR, I think, are in an exciting place, I think, right now with what we can do with engagement. I think engagement to me, really, when I really truly kind of try to break it down, it's kind of three elements. One is around commitment to the organization. So if you're committed, you're engaged, right? You're participating. Involvement in the workplace. People who are involved want to learn, do training, participate in webinars and attend, employee sessions. Those are involved, they're engaged. And then a mechanism around kind of looking at low turnover rates, low absence rates. Kind of those three elements to me put together kind of are the keys to being able to understand engagement. And at the end of the day, I think engagement really in a nutshell is you want people to show up, be fully present, and focus on work. So everything else kind of try to, not have distractions. Of course, everybody has lives and things happen and kids and activities. And so that becomes a challenge in how you have them, be able to either compartmentalize and kind of focus on the work. I think a great example of it, and Katie touched on that, is around having a mission in the organization. And a good example of that for me in my career, and that I'm glad I got an opportunity to kind of witness it and be part of it, is the work I do with HR Alliance as the president of the board. And so our board is made up of all volunteers. So they have day jobs, lives, kids, activities, and they volunteer their time. There's no financial incentive, right? Unlike employees, there is some kind of financial incentive and things like that. With volunteers, there's no financial incentives. And they don't directly report to me as the president of the board. They're there on voluntary basis. My job is to make sure I am inspiring them and motivating them so they can come back and we can have productive board meetings. And so what I think really drives their engagement, and this is where I think it's very critical because we sometimes forget, we think financially driven, a lot of employees, but I think a lot of it is also has to do with the mission. And so at HR Alliance C, I think the individuals show up and are engaged because they truly believe in the mission of the organization and want to see it succeed. And so if organizations can have a clear message around what it is they're trying to solve as an organization and take employees on that journey, for us, for my company, for Venture Global LNG, that for company I work today, our mission is to innovate and provide accessible, low cost, clean energy to the world. That's something that we can have employees stand behind. So that's kind of engagement to me. In terms of measuring, which I think the second piece, and that's much, gets a little bit harder because you have to be creative sometimes in ways to measure. I think tools like engagement surveys, Glassdoor reviews are always fun to read, and you can kind of check those out and see what's been said about your organizations. But I think some of the qualitative measures also around making sure that you can tell the managers know their teams, right? That's a very qualitative measure. But if you have managers that really, really know their teams, their teams are going to be engaged. Or you could look at something like promotion rates. As the organization's growing, are people getting promoted and moving up and getting the opportunities? So those are kind of the elements we look at.
Thank you both. And that kind of moves into the second part, which is retention, which is I think has also come more into focus since March 2020, when all of our lives changed. How are you, if people are engaged and they're continuing to show that, or if they are wavering and you see that somebody you want to keep, the people you want to develop through the organization, how are you retaining the people you already have, and has that changed since March 2020? Julie, I'll start with you first on that one.
Yes. Absolutely changed, right? With the Great Resignation, the job hopping, the environment, now, the recession. So there's so many more elements to play that come into play. So definitely the thinking around it has changed. We, like most organizations today, are looking at all different types of programs and elements and ways to design retention programs. And we're looking at both monetary and non-monetary elements and how those play together. I think the best way to do it is kind of combine both monetary and non-monetary elements in a way that is very, in a clever design that is very targeted and very customized to the group. So you can identify who your high performers are. You can identify the teams that you want to keep. You can identify those key skills in areas that you definitely want to see progress, and you don't want people to leave because those people have the historical knowledge and experience. So you can identify those and build programs around that. So, we are in the process of looking at all different ways we can create retention programs. But I think the key in my mind when I think about retention is kind of three key elements, right? It's the monetary reward piece, which is important, right? Because there are people moving for, slight increases to your competitors. So there's the monetary piece that could be a bonus or a payment or even enhancements to benefits or providing greater, more richer benefit programs to employees. And so there's kind of that tangible cash value. The challenge with those programs is that it needs to be designed in a way that has satisfactory element short term because you want to keep them, and yet being able to create some long-term hook because you don't want to just pay them and see them leave. So that's the challenge with those kinds of programs. I think the other important key that supports it, and this is more of the qualitative piece, is creating those opportunities for growth, promotion, and development. And in our organization today, we are fast-paced, we're growing, there's opportunities that we can bring people in and they can create and develop their career probably a way they haven't been able to do before. And so being able to communicate that and make sure employees understand that and the mission of the organization and the career path or a career trajectory or opportunities within career. Maybe it's more of a flat, doesn't have to be up, it could be opportunities across the board, taking on international projects or something like that. Being able to have that as a second piece. And then the third piece for me, and this one's the most difficult, right? This one's around having great managers. We know people leave because of pay. That's probably number one, right? But we've seen enough studies, I'm sure all of us have seen studies come out, that there are other top elements in why people leave. And, I would say the second highest is people not liking their boss or people not kind of understanding where the leadership is going, right? So leadership and boss and managers around that, they're not liking it. And so people leave because of that. And so having a very good managers who are compassionate, who are provide the growth opportunity, who provide guidance, I think people would stay. And it's so interesting because I recently ran across a data point. I was reading through some surveys, and it was a Gallup survey on workplace insights that they did, and there was a data point around retention. And if I remember correctly, it said it would take over 20% pay raise to lure an employee away from a manager who really engages them, and next to nothing for a disengaged employee. Now, I would say 20% is a pretty good premium to pay for your competitors to poach your employees. So the manager link, I think, is key, and it's kind of both. It covers both things. Managers are, I think, important both for the engagement piece as well as for the retention piece. And again, that one's with the managers, it's a different kind of thinking, right? Developing good managers, measuring good management style. Those are all different kind of programs. We are just in the beginning of what that potentially could look like and how we can develop that further.
Oh, that last stat is incredible, and it definitely lines up though with things that I hear when I talk with clients or even candidates at a high level who are looking for for jobs is that people are much more likely right now to leave a role for a similar title and similar pay, if not if their benefit not and for benefits and better quality of life is important, but if they don't feel challenged or that they don't, one of the first things they'll always say is I don't either I don't jive well with my manager, or that person is not relinquishing control, they're not delegating properly, all those different things. That's really interesting. Thank you, Julia. Katie, what about you?
Yeah, Julia, great insights. Thank you. Yeah, I think, to add to what she said, I would also say that recognizing that not all employees are the same. So what is important to them and what they value is going to vary greatly. Our organization, we have such a variety. We've got folks that are close to retirement, maybe even past typical retirement age. We have folks that are right out of school, folks that live in the city, folks that commute 45 minutes to an hour, just a real variety in terms of people. And so I just attended a Women in Construction conference here in DC a couple weeks ago, and the theme was, how do we understand the different generations, empowering across generations. And so there was tons of talk about the typical, millennials versus Gen Z versus Gen X, all the terms, right? But it was fascinating. It was so, when you put representatives from each generation on a panel and see the variety of needs they have and how they're motivated in different ways, I think it's important to think about retention in that mindset. So, compensation, of course, is a big one. And compensation, again, means something different for different folks in terms of where they're at in their life. But, we try to constantly look at compensation, making sure that if we see somebody that is out of alignment with what we're seeing in the market, what we're seeing with candidates in similar positions, that we address that we don't necessarily have to wait until our review cycle to address that. But then also, how are we communicating to the employee why we're making an adjustment? You can't just throw money at something and think that the message gets through. Annual bonuses are definitely important for us as a very project-based company. How we do as an organization, if we have a good year, are we sharing that with the employees? And if we're not having a great year, are we communicating what that means? So, it comes back to communication, right? Which we've talked about quite a bit here. But then, talking about the intangibles or the, non-compensation related items, the other thing is just looking at what people are dealing with in their lives right now. And, they might be dealing with a spouse who is working from home remotely, or maybe the employee is working remotely, but the spouse is not, or they have kids and, there's lots of days off and things. There's just a variety. Aging parents is becoming a bigger and bigger issue with some of our employees. So, understanding what emotional and physical toll life is having on somebody, and making sure that you're aware of that and giving them resources to support them, and making sure that you're flexible enough. I mean, not every organization can be super flexible and say, oh, come whenever you want and work from home or the coffee shop or the office. In our organization, we're less flexible. People have to go to a construction site, or they need to come in the office. They might need to come at certain times of the day, but how are we communicating with them to identify other ways that we can provide flexibility? Maybe it's that if they have to work on the weekend, we give them other days off and don't make them take vacation, or whatever it might be. It's having those conversations. It's formally maybe engagement surveys, but also equipping your managers to be in tune with their employees. And Julia, I love what you're saying. people do leave for managers. I mean, I talk to candidates every single day, and it's if a candidate doesn't flat out say it, they beat around the bush, and that's what they're saying. It's so important. You're with these people 40 and 50 hours a week. You want to feel appreciated and empowered and like the people you work with. It's something that I talk about with our candidates. I think in our company, I'm fortunate people seem to really like coming to work. We like being together. We have a lot of fun. We laugh a lot. We build really cool things. And so, we try to focus on that. But yeah, we all can improve as managers. And so just offering those trainings, offering opportunities to coach people, that's where HR just adds so much value to an organization. So the only other thing I would add too is the learning piece. People want to keep learning. You talk about thinking about the generations. The young folks want to feel connected to a mission. They want to feel like they're having some sort of impact, but they also want to keep learning. And so how are we providing opportunities for them to learn? Maybe they're getting a master's degree and we give them flexibility in their schedule, or we help pay for that degree, or we send them to a training course in another city. And so they get an opportunity to kind of have a little vacation, but also learn, and the organization's invested in them in that way. There's creative ways that you can spend money on an employee that's not, your typical compensation. But then communicating that value to the employees so they understand why you're investing in them and because you value them.
Thank you, Katie. And Julie, I'm curious too, if you have any really thoughts on any of the first two questions. I know we talked about some of these things. Would love to hear anything. I'm putting you on the spot here a bit, but I know you're well equipped to answer this. Or in your talking with clients on your side, anything to add to the things that Katie and Julie have already mentioned?
Sure. So for those of you who don't know me, as Sam mentioned, I am a managing director and founder of HCSC, and we provide outsourced HR services as well as training and development coaching to organizations. So I'm sitting kind of right in between the panelists and Sam relative to the clients that I'm serving as well. And absolutely, I think when you boil everything down that we're talking about this morning, it's about relationship building and it's about trust. And so what I'm seeing with my clients, especially now, and again, I'm gonna weave this into the next question, I promise. With the economy kind of tightening, even in industries that are growing and stable, I think some of the folks in our workforce have not gone through. I am old enough to remember and started my career when the economy was in, I think the word was recession. And so I am very familiar with the external factors that play into sort of the employee mindset, right? Some of these folks have never been in an economy where they have not had 6 job offers. And so I think that external experience is going to play into how we as HR leaders navigate the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. And so the advice, the guidance, the feedback that I am providing my clients, and I'm sure you all are as well, it's about transparency, which we've talked about, around communication, about strategy and goals and objectives, and telling our folks and being honest with the information that we can share about what's happening, and also trusting them to be honest with us. And so as long as those lines of communication are staying open, and I think all of your organizations sounds like are doing that well, the trust with the employee and therefore the engagement is going to be increased, and you're going to keep the right people. And I think that's kind of the goal. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to chat, Sam. I'd love to, if we can, we have a quick poll, just because I know some organizations are back in the office, some organizations are not. If you could respond to this message for those participants, we have a quick poll. Are you back into the office? And if so, what percentage of time? 25% of the time, 50% of the time, 75 or 100? I'm not back in the office and I work remotely. This is for you personally, right? So not your organization as a whole, but you personally. So if you all could do that, that would be terrific. And then I would love to just talk a little bit more, Katie, I'd love to hear from you. I know your organization has been back, never really were remote. It's hard to build things remotely. So I'd love to know sort of how you all are navigating that. And I know I have a couple of clients in the construction industry. How are you navigating the fact that the workplace, or the way that we work, has transitioned and changed over the last 2.5 years? And so you touched on this a little bit during your previous answer, but how are you finding folks that are engaged at that point? Are you seeing higher levels of turnover? Is it impacting your recruiting? How is your sort of talent acquisition strategy had to change and adjust based on that? So I'm going to give you all a couple more minutes to respond to the poll, and then we'll post the answers in just a second. I'm going to let you talk, Katie.
Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely. So we have been unique that we have been mostly in the office this whole time. I mean, we shut down for a little bit, but our strategy has been to just be very upfront and honest from that initial phone screen. I don't want to drag anybody through the interview process only to bring them in for a second round and get really excited about someone only to find out that they can't come into the office 5 days a week. So I try to just be very open right away. It saves my heart from being too excited. I've definitely got excited about candidates and then they don't work out for that reason. So now it's part of that initial conversation. It certainly has affected our ability to recruit in certain roles. Thankfully, I mean, I've talked to other general contractors. I make sure I'm staying up to date on what they're all doing, and we're all in the office. And so in terms of competitors, we're not competing against organizations with a different philosophy. However, for roles such as accounting and HR and marketing, all of which we're growing, all 3 departments, we have had a very tough time with this particular issue. It's hard. Accounting could work from home. They're correct, but it wouldn't make sense for us to carve out just one function to be at home when everybody else is in the office. And so it's made us have to widen our search a bit and to say, okay, maybe we don't need somebody who's been in the construction industry. Where can we bend so that we can find the talent we need? And we don't want to compromise, we don't want to lower our standards. So sometimes it means that we have to just be patient and, wait and have, we're seeing the results here. I'll stop for a minute so we can.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's all over the map, right? Which is what I would expect, right? Especially the folks who are attending this webinar. I would expect folks to be kind of all over the map. And again, I think that's what I'm seeing in sort of our client experience and what you all are representing as well. But I will say, I think the concept and the idea of working with people in a team environment, particularly when you said kind of mission focused, and I love the transparency that you're saying, right? You're not trying to lead people on, and if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit. But I think more and more people are aware of the fact that there's a lot of synergy to be had for in-person co-working. And when you find the right candidates, it really is the right fit, and it's the right fit. And it sounds like you all are navigating that successfully, which is exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's definitely made us, we just have to be patient, to find that right candidate. And sometimes it means there's a bit of a burden on the existing employees, and we just talk about that and acknowledge that. But, eventually you do find that right person that's a good fit, and they come in the office and they say, oh yeah, we tried it, our office place, we've moved into a fun area, we've invested in having an office space that people want to come to. We have events, we have snacks, we have, all those things.
It's reflective of your culture, right? Like it's an offshoot of your culture. And I think before this all went down 2.5, 3 years ago, it was an afterthought around, again, this is a different topic. We probably need to talk about, Sam, with a real estate person on a webinar in the future. But like the fact that like Now it is a forethought in how you do your planning. It's a strategic advantage to have a place and a location that works and is reflective of your organization's culture.
Exactly. Yeah. But I do want to say, for those of you that are remote organizations or have a large, remote workforce, this topic of engagement is so important. You have to be so creative and reach out even more. You have to teach people how to work remotely, how to communicate. It's a whole nother area for HR to add value and to invest in our people. And I'm sure, Julia, you have something to add, so I'll let you add to that.
Yes, I'm just like nodding furiously because I totally agree. And I think even though we're in a different space, you're in construction, we're in an energy space, we are kind of in the similar mindset. For us, we've been back in the office for over a year. I think we started back last May, June, which is hard to believe, but we came back full time. There was no transition in. That we came back full time to the office, and it's part of our culture, right? We have majority of our populations are working on site at these large plants. They have to be on site working because we're operating plant 24/7, and so that kind of mindset to be on site and present carries over through the whole entire organization. And the culture of being present at the office is really pushed from the top down. And I think the second element of, kind of everybody being in the office, including those that are on site, is our leaders strongly believe that face-to-face collaboration is what drives business success. And that's how they communicate it. And that's what's instilled in the organization. Now, like Katie, I will say there's been, some challenges in terms of attraction and new hires coming on board, particularly in the DMV area. We have so many organizations are still working remote, but with some patience, and we lean on a lot around our mission and vision and growth, and the opportunities our company can create for somebody who's starting out their career, mid-career, right? There's a lot of those opportunities that we can communicate and lean on that as the value proposition to both engage and retain our current employees as well as attract new employees. We have a beautiful office in Rosslyn, Virginia, which is, again, right, we have the snacks, we have the free drinks, we kind of make it accessible and available for people to come, but the expectation is that they are in the office. And that kind of, again, that's kind of ingrained in the culture of who we are and how we do business.
I think it's interesting too. I'm seeing a little bit of a shift of people who are looking for jobs right now, understanding that the mindset of a lot of companies has changed, and also that in your examples of being in the office, it's not so much, again, I'm painting with a broad brush, but it's not so much the people are refusing to leave home and want to work at home and never see the outside world or see people they work with. It's the flexibility around someone not looking over their shoulder, right? Where everyone shows up at 8 and then leaves at 5, and everyone takes lunch at the same time. And that kind of cadence of not having the flexibility with kids, or, caring for, one of your parents, or things outside work, that as long as there's those core, I think this is probably the future, as long as there's these core things that you have to be physically present for, that's okay. But as long as there's some flexibility outside of that, given things that are happening in your personal life, that's really what people want. When I talk to people looking for a job, and when you really drill down to it, they'll say, well, I don't necessarily have to only be remote. I like it. I do like seeing people I work with, but I also like the flexibility of someone not overly micromanaging me down to the minute, where they know where I am every second of the day, which I think it goes back to, if you're hiring the right people and you're transparent up front and you're bringing in the right candidates to your organization, that should take care of itself. It doesn't always. But yeah, really interesting in the fact that the poll too, really, it's spread all over the place. Only 100% of people are only 10% of people are fully back in the office, and 34% are still working fully remotely. So that's I'm not fully surprised by that.
Sam,
Can I just put in,
something?
I'm
You
sorry,
just
real
triggered
quick,
a
Julia, I'm just going to put in a quick plug for questions. If anybody has any questions, please use the Q&A feature. We are going to have plenty of time at the end of this, and we just want to make sure we're getting your questions. So back to you, Julia.
Thanks. Sam, you were saying something that triggered a thought around flexibility, right? And I think flexibility is fantastic and it's great. But, I could argue that telling people to be in the office Monday, Wednesday, Friday is not flexibility. So I think there's now, the mindset has completely changed about being in the office. It's people feel about it differently, right? And pandemic has caused kind of, some anxiety. Some people are just like, yeah, I could do this remotely and I don't have to come in. So it's so down to individual level. It's very hard for an organization, I think, to make those broad, you come in 3 days a week, which some people might think, well, I don't want Monday, I want Tuesday. So I almost think, right, having people be at the office and that's part of the culture. Of course, it doesn't mean, everybody, we're all human. This is where human resources department comes in, right? There's programs where you need to take leave, you can go on FMLA leave, you need to take care of elderly parents, right? There's all those situations that happen. And this is where I think the whole level of managers have to be aware and be able to provide that room and safe space and acknowledge the needs of their individual employees, rather than organization broadly saying, this is now the new standard. So I think there's kind of, and that's hard, right? There's I don't have a magic bullet. I don't think anybody does it, because it's almost like organizations trying to do something for everybody. And yet this particular thing about coming to the office is so individualistic today. So I don't know if we're ever going to solve this, to be honest, but I know we all as organizations try to do our best to meet our employees, and their needs and accommodate them as much as possible.
Well, and that's the undercurrent of employee engagement and retention, right? Like we couldn't have this conversation today if we didn't at least acknowledge the elephant in the room, so to speak, right?
Right.
Or at least maybe people wouldn't come back if we didn't acknowledge it. So.
Right.
I just wanted to add, you brought up the word flexibility. When I talk to candidates, I hear all the time, I want flexibility. I'm looking for flexibility. I'm leaving because I didn't get enough flexibility. And so, Sam, what you're saying is drilling down, what does flexibility mean to you? And what does flexibility mean to us? Because it can mean very, very different things for each person and each organization. So I think you're right, Sam, figuring out what is the flexibility they need? Is it that they want to drop their kid off at school every day, so they can't have a meeting before 8:30 or 9? Okay, we could in some positions we can manage that kind of flexibility. It's figuring out what does that mean, defining that very broad word.
And I mean, Julie, I'm curious, in your situation, where you're working in a little bit of a different environment than Katie and Julia, what are you seeing out there? How have things changed over the last couple of years?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, I think relative to retention and engagement, I think it's obviously in the market, the labor market has really sort of shifted a lot of the option and choice into the candidate or the employee side, which for some of my clients and some of my leaders that I interact with on a regular basis was a little bit humbling, I'll be honest. Like they were not quite sure how to navigate this path. And I think it forced some real candid reflection among leadership teams that perhaps they weren't really, we had a lot of great conversations that needed to be had in order to really solve business problems, right? It put human resources literally at the forefront of strategic business decisions that I think otherwise may not have been as prevalent, which is exciting for an HR leader, like us who thrive in those situations and really want to be progressive about having a positive employee experience for everyone in the organization. So I think that's what I would sort of broad brush categorize things. I think when I think about everything we've talked about this morning and I overlay that with my experiences with my clients, it's become almost a personalized recruiting or talent acquisition experience. And each organization almost has to come up with the talent acquisition plan that works for them, which is a challenge for organizations that are not prepared to have that, or they don't have the talent internally to navigate that, which is great as a consultant because we can help support that. But I will say, I think the organizations that have gotten it right, and I think Julia and Katie's organizations are clearly sitting in that position, are able to attract and retain high quality, ethical, strong performers. And so when something like a tightening of the market, or you have to make decisions around, and I'm not saying your organizations are doing this, I'm saying, I think we're going to see more, right? This morning, Amazon, there was on the news that they're laying off 11,000 workers, or maybe that was Meta. There's a lot of constriction in the employment market that I think we're going to continue to see over the next 6 months. And the organizations that have navigated successfully over the last 2.5 years are going to fare much better with their retaining quality employees and employee engagement. And because at some point, it's not just going to be about the money. I mean, you just that it's going to be about the relationship that you have with your employee population. At least that's what I'm experiencing. So it's a long-winded answer, Sam. I'm gonna let you get back to the script so I don't take us too offline. But
no, it's good.
That's what I'm seeing.
It's so interesting, and I could read endless articles about this and about what's happening. And I mean, it's definitely ever changing. There's more and more pressure on human resources professionals than ever. We had someone else write in and commented that their organization is back in the office technically, but only require employees to come in one time a month. And even with that flexibility, only 50% show up on the one day they're supposed to come in, about 300 out of 650. So that is really flexible. And it's that's challenging. And if that means, people can live wherever they want, and then one time a month, come in for a couple days, or they, that is a lot of flexibility at that point. But I also want to touch on one more thing before we finish up, or take any other questions. Onboarding of new hires. A lot of times, another big focus that I hear about a lot when I'm talking with people who are hiring for new roles, the onboarding experience and how that relates to getting someone off on the right foot, and how that turns into good employee engagement and retention down the line. How has the onboarding experience changed, if at all? And how much does that play into the overall employee experience? Let's see, Katie, why don't you start us off on that one?
Okay. Yeah. So for us, we are a growing organization. So we have hired so many people in the last year. I mean, when I got started with this organization 5 years ago, we got down to 20 people, and now we're over 50. And we're, we've got 12 open positions. So if anybody's looking, so we're growing. And so on one hand, we're just constantly improving that onboarding experience. We've been flexible to grow and adapt and whatnot. And, I think the biggest thing is that we try to just really help employees understand where they can get the resources they need. But also our big thing is after day one, making sure their computer works, they can get into everything they need to get into, and staying with them through any difficulties that they might be having with that. There's nothing more frustrating for a new hire than not knowing where to get the answers, or not being able to actually get their work done or get started. So that's our big thing, is just making sure that they know who to go to for their questions. So that's where we see our HR team, myself and my colleague, we put a lot of emphasis on kind of spending a lot of time with our new hires that first week, I was just telling Julia yesterday, I missed an email from her because I was with a new hire all day. And I think, and my leadership team agrees, that's a really good use of my time, no matter what level the new hire is, that I spend a lot of time with them on that first day. So, but then also making sure, like I mentioned earlier, we do this check-in at the 90-day mark and just really see where we're at, making sure nothing's gotten missed. Maybe the person is off site, so I'm not seeing them every day. I can't check in on a regular basis as easily. Making sure that 90 days in, do they feel supported? Are they hitting the ground running? Are they in the right position? Is the manager they're working with, is that the right fit? Evaluating all of those and making adjustments if needed.
Well, and it's so interesting, Katie, and I promise Julia we'll get to your answer in just a sec. The fact that I think historically 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, new hire orientation was incumbent on just the HR team. And I think now I view it, and I'm sure you all do, it sounds like you do too, it's an integration and it's not a one-time thing. And so acknowledging and recognizing the fact that it truly is a team effort to integrate that employee into the organization successfully. And I think it's amazing that you and your team within HR started off by setting the tone correctly with that investment of your time. But then also, it sounds like there's a great partnership from your management team that they take the baton from there. And also it's not just a solo responsibility, which I think is most organizations that do it well have that mentality. Yeah. How about you, Julia?
Yeah, I literally would just underscore what both of you just said. I would add that, onboarding seems like it's one of those ever evolving things. One, because there's a lot of more tools out there that can make the experience for the new hires easier, both from administrative perspective from HR, right? Because we need them to fill out forms, we need to sign in things, as well as from then being able to connect with us earlier in there, right before they even day one, and be able to learn about the organization, perhaps even connect with the manager ahead of time. So having the right tools in place, which are evolving, as I said, is a key here, and making that, that burdensome experience around all the forms as easy as possible. So I think if you can tackle that as an organization, and we try to do that, seamlessly, one login, you fill everything out, make it simple, don't have them read 5,000, there's policies and practices, but, they don't have to read absolutely everything right as they are onboarding. And then again, a connection with the manager ahead of time. I think being able to have, either a buddy or some way that they can have support navigating the organization. I will say we're not the easiest organization to navigate because we're growing so fast and things are changing. So being able to either partner them up with somebody or, their manager really playing an active role. So in our case, HR does a lot of the, need to do forms and introductions, but really the managers play a really important role because their teams are moving so fast, and introducing to the teams, talking about the vision and mission. That's not on HR today because our teams are quite different departments do different things, and the team leaders, not just the managers, but the team leaders could do a much better job explaining that. So we partner with them to do it rather than HR having to do it. So to your point, Julia, it's kind of it's not, day one. In fact, we're trying to get away from this whole first day, you do nothing but sit with HR. That's not what we want. It's, key is you have your computer, you can log on and you can actually get started. You get to meet your team. It's more about experiences, introductions, and then follow up with, benefits, enrollment, all the paperwork, all the other stuff. So really trying to get away from this whole first day, you sit with HR for a full day and just, may not retain a lot.
Yeah, I like both of those. All those ideas. I think that's it is always refreshing to see organizations that have a plan in place and really over communicate with candidates prior to them starting. So there's a clear picture, weeks, days out, and they really have a script for what's going to happen. It is this, and it's really tough if you're a small organization and Katie, if you're doing everything, bigger companies that are really have a lot of red tape and are bureaucratic, they struggle with it too. So no one is, that's never perfect, but over communicating, I think, is key. I have one last question that I'm putting both of you on the spot with, but I think you'll both be good at this. What is one benefit that you've added, either you added in 2022 or you're adding as part of your benefits in 2023 that is new, or you think is something that your current employees have asked for that you think is going to be a big hit? Don't all rush to answer at the same time. I know there's something out there.
Well, I will go first. And the reason is we are actually an off-cycle benefit enrollment. So we're not doing our enrollment. We're just starting our discussions around what we're going to do. We have a different benefit cycle. Also, I would say in our world, one of the things we do well is benefits, and we have a really rich benefits plan. My goal is to keep it at that rich level today. So it's not necessarily adding the bells and whistles for us. It's more around keeping the richness and communicating that value, the heck out of that value, because that's our biggest value proposition in terms of engagement, attraction, and retention.
So my answer is 100% the same. We also have an off-cycle benefits cycle, and are just starting our discussions about the next year. But also in DC, when you hit that over 50 employee mark, things really change for you from a benefits perspective. So soon we'll be looking at a lot of new options, but agreed, our founders value benefits. They always have. Our founder's wife is on the board of the FDA Foundation, and they're on boards of hospitals. She runs a cancer research company, so nonprofit. And so, having rich benefits is a very deep value for our founders, and then has trickled down to those of us that are still involved in the day-to-day. So agreed with the communication of that value is probably one of the biggest challenges. People sometimes glaze over when you start talking about benefits. So we do an annual total compensation statement to just show them the monetary value of our benefits. But there's so much that insurance companies and brokers and stuff have as part of just your normal benefits package that, making sure people are tapping into those things.
Julie, how about you? Is there anything on the top of your mind that you've seen recently?
I think it's a trend. I don't know that it's new, but giving folks the autonomy to do whatever a spot sort of recognition. So whether it's a $25 gift card to somebody who did a great thing, like during the month. So some sort of program that offers some autonomy for recognition at the manager level, I think is something that is often not considered a benefit, but really is. And so I'm seeing more and more around pushing down the ability for folks to recognize in a meaningful way, sort of the efforts on a day-to-day basis, because I think waiting until, quarter end, year end can sometimes delay the response. So that's what I'm seeing. And I know we're wrapping up. So I just want to thank Julia and Katie for doing an amazing job this morning. I could obviously talk about this all day. I appreciate our participants for staying here. Sam, I'm going to let you officially close it out. Thank you for being my Ryan Seacrest to my Kelly Ripa, as always.
Wow, that is very nice. Yes, we really appreciate it. It is 9:59. Thank you for everything again. I know, we could do this for more than an hour if everyone had time. Maybe we'll do it on a weekend sometime when everyone has all the time in the world. But yes, thank you, Katie and Julia, for joining us. We hope you found this beneficial. If you want to connect, I'm not offering up their services, but if you want to connect with Julie or Julia or Katie, please do. Thank you to the Cordia Resources team, especially our amazing marketing team. Kate, thank you. And Julie, thank you for your support. And to note again, you will receive an email with this for the people who weren't able to join today live. You'll get an email with this webinar recording in the next few days. 10 o'clock. Thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your Tuesday and rest of your week. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Take care. Be well.
Thank you, everyone.